November 3rd, 2005. An FBI field office in Los Angeles. A 20-year-old arrives thinking he's picking up computer equipment. Special agents are waiting. What would you do if you controlled 400,000 computers? Steal credit cards? Crash websites? Impress girls? If you're anything like Jeanson James Ancheta, you'd rent them out like used cars, advertise prices in public chat rooms, and spend $600 every Friday on clothes and car parts for his BMW. His IRC handle was Resilient. The name would prove ironic. When the FBI raided his house the first time in December 2004, confiscating his computer, he was back online within a day. When they told him to stop hacking military computers, he ignored them. When they warned him he was being watched, he kept advertising botnets in public channels under his own name. He'd just been indicted on 17 federal counts for building the largest criminal botnet the US government had ever prosecuted. Over 400,000 infected machines, over $100,000 in proceeds, military systems compromised, and he had no idea the agents calling him to pick up equipment were actually executing his arrest warrant. The FBI lured him to their office on the pretext of collecting computer equipment. It was part of Operation Bot Roast, a name that would have been funny if it wasn't so effective. When Ancheta walked through those doors, his freedom walked out. He was wearing designer clothes purchased with botnet money. His BMW, a 1993 model he'd souped up with thousands in aftermarket parts, sat in the parking lot outside. Inside his wallet, receipts from Western Union payments. In his computer's chat logs, every incriminating transaction he'd ever made. The FBI had been watching for 11 months. They'd bought bots from him while posing as criminals. They'd monitored his IRC channels. They traced every PayPal transaction labeled web hosting that was actually botnet rental fees. FBI agent Ken McGuire would later say, "Up to then, we hadn't seen anything as blatant. The sting was over before it began, but the precedent it would set would reshape cybercrime prosecutions forever."
If you are enjoying this video, consider subscribing to Arxis to dive deep into the real stories behind the world's most notorious hackers. A like really helps the channel, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Rewind to 2001, Downey High School, California. Jeanson James Ancheta dropped out, enrolled in an alternative program for students with behavioral problems, and spent his days at an internet cafe learning what schools couldn't teach him: how to control machines remotely without permission. According to his family, he wanted to join the military reserves. The irony, he'd end up attacking military computers instead of defending them. Around June 2004, during late-night IRC sessions, he discovered rxbot. Someone had posted the source code in a hacking channel, a worm that exploited Windows vulnerabilities and turned infected computers into remotely controlled bots. Most people downloaded it, played with it, and moved on. Ancheta saw a business model. If he could modify rxbot to spread faster and evade detection, he could build a massive botnet. If he controlled thousands of machines, he could rent that computational power. Criminals needed proxies for spam. Competitors needed DDoS attacks. Advertisers needed installations. Supply? 400,000 infected computers. Demand? Unlimited. He taught himself by modifying rxbot's code, improving its spreading mechanisms, making it harder to detect. His early versions crashed systems, triggered antivirus alerts, and failed to maintain persistent control, but he iterated relentlessly. It was in an IRC channel called #BotTalk that he met his future accomplice, a 16-year-old from Boca Raton, Florida, who used the handle Sobi. Sobi had dropped out after 8th grade, spent his days coding in C++ and playing World of Warcraft, and came from an affluent family. His father was a landscaper, his mother a middle school teacher. What drew Sobi to Ancheta wasn't just his technical skills, it was proof. You can't really lie about that when you take screenshots proving you have well over 70K, Sobi later recalled. Most IRC users claim massive botnets but had nothing. Ancheta had a MySpace profile packed with photos of his souped-up BMW and friends, the lifestyle Sobi wanted. By August 2004, they were partners. Their criminal empire was about to explode. Their botnet army grew to over 400,000 computers by early 2005. But Ancheta and Sobi weren't like other hackers.
They didn't just steal, they built a business. Ancheta advertised in IRC channels, selling access to botnets for DDoS attacks or spam distribution. He maintained a website with pricing tiers, guidelines on how many bots you'd need to take down specific types of websites, customer service that included setup, testing, and technical support. In one transaction, he sold 10,000 bots to a woman for $400. She wanted spam proxies. He delivered, provided an instruction manual, and even tested the setup to ensure her spam campaign would work. But the real money came from adware. Ancheta and Sobi signed up as affiliates with companies like GammaCache and LoudCache. These companies paid per installation, pennies each time someone agreed to install software. Except nobody was agreeing. Ancheta's bots were installing it silently on 400,000 machines. To generate roughly $60,000 in advertising affiliate proceeds, Ancheta caused the surreptitious installation of adware on approximately 400,000 compromised computers. He varied download times to avoid detection. When hosting companies discovered the malicious activity, he redirected his botnet armies to different servers he controlled. The money was intoxicating. In one chat message to Sobi, Ancheta bragged, "My spending average is $600 a week. Every Friday I buy new clothes, and every week I buy new parts for my car." But their rxbot variant had a problem. It was buggy. It aggressively spread to nearby networks, sometimes beyond intended targets. This caused infections at sensitive institutions: Sandia National Labs, China Lake Naval Air Facility, Defense Information Systems Agency. Both hackers ignored warnings they'd received back in August 2004 to filter out government domains like .gov and .mil from their botnet's targets. They even left calling cards. Before leaving compromised servers, they'd leave graffiti, digital signatures like street artists tagging walls. Ego was overtaking caution. The FBI was watching every move. December 2004, the first FBI raid. Agents stormed Ancheta's Downey home and confiscated his computer. His parents stood in shocked silence. Federal investigators seized evidence, delivered warnings. 24 hours later, Ancheta was back online, continuing his botnet activities with Sobi. How do you justify continuing a crime after the FBI raids your house? In one online chat, Ancheta told Sobi, "It's immoral, but the money makes it right." The logic was twisted but revealing. He wasn't robbing banks or stealing identities, he was providing a service. His customers wanted botnets, he supplied them. The adware companies wanted installations, he delivered. In his mind, this was entrepreneurship, not cybercrime. Sobi later described their mindset. "It doesn't matter. James can get off and go back to doing it, and in under a month he will be making 3x what he made and be able to cover his tracks much better." They felt untouchable. The FBI had raided once, but made no arrests. To Ancheta and Sobi, this confirmed they were smarter than law enforcement. The warnings became challenges. The investigation became a game. The FBI discovered Ancheta's activities by monitoring the chat rooms where he advertised his botnet. Posing as potential clients, FBI agents purchased bots and began tracking him. Every transaction was documented, every chat log saved, every PayPal payment traced. But Ancheta kept advertising. Channel name, #bots4sale. Messages like classified ads. 10,000 fresh bots. Military networks, $5,000. Serious buyers only. Meanwhile, Sobi made a rookie mistake, leasing a server using his real identity. Combined with Ancheta's brazen public advertisements, their operational security was non-existent. FBI agent Ken McGuire would later explain why they prioritized this case. Up to then, we hadn't seen anything as blatant. Ancheta wasn't hiding in encrypted channels or using sophisticated anonymity tools. He was advertising crime in public, like a used car salesman. The second raid was inevitable. This time, there would be no warnings. May 2005. FBI agents raided both hackers' homes simultaneously. In Boca Raton, Florida, agents stormed Sobek's family's 3-story house while he was recovering from a recent motorcycle accident. They seized thousands of dollars worth of computers, video games, and electronics as his parents watched, unaware of their son's activities. In Downey, California, agents hit Ancheta's house for the second time in 6 months. But this raid was different. They weren't just gathering evidence anymore. They were building an airtight federal case. The FBI disabled the servers that Sobek and Ancheta were using. The botnet empire collapsed overnight. Hundreds of thousands of zombie computers suddenly disconnected from their command and control infrastructure. But Ancheta wasn't arrested. Not yet. For 6 months, prosecutors built their case. On November 2, 2005, a federal grand jury indicted Jeanson James Ancheta on 17 counts: conspiracy to violate the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, damaging federal government computers, accessing protected computers to commit fraud, money laundering, and CAN-SPAM Act violations. Maximum combined sentence: 25 years in federal prison. November 3, 2005, the phone call came. FBI had computer equipment for him to collect. Would he come to their office? Ancheta said yes. When he arrived at the FBI field office, agents were waiting. The equipment collection was a sting. Operation Bot Roast was springing its trap. After being arrested that morning, Ancheta was transported to U.S. District Court for arraignment. The charges were read. The evidence was overwhelming. Chat logs, PayPal transactions, Western Union receipts, screenshots of his IRC advertisements, testimony from FBI agents who'd posed as customers and purchased bots directly from him. His attorney faced an impossible defense. Every transaction was documented. Every crime was proven. The only question was, how long would the sentence be? For Sobek, being a juvenile at the time of the crimes offered protection. For Ancheta, at age 20, there was no such mercy. The precedent-setting sentencing was 6 months away.
May 9th, 2006. Federal Courtroom, Los Angeles. Jeanson James Ancheta, now 21, stood before U.S. District Judge R. Gary Klausner. He'd already pleaded guilty. 4 felony charges: violating Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, conspiring to violate CAN-SPAM Act, damaging government computers used in national defense, and accessing protected computers to commit fraud. Ancheta admitted using computer servers to transmit malicious code, building botnets through IRC channels, and earning approximately $3,000 by selling botnet access in more than 30 separate transactions. He acknowledged generating over $107,000 in advertising affiliate proceeds by downloading adware to more than 400,000 infected computers. The prosecution's case was devastating. Assistant U.S. Attorney James Aquilina argued this was the longest sentence ever handed down for spreading computer viruses. The defense pleaded for leniency. He was young, willing to cooperate, capable of rehabilitation. Judge Klausner characterized Ancheta's crimes as extensive, serious, and sophisticated. Then came the sentence: 57 months in federal prison, 3 years supervised release, forfeiture of $58,000 in cash and his 1993 BMW, $15,000 in restitution to the Weapons Division of the U.S. Naval Air Warfare Center and Defense Information Systems Agency. Aquilina told reporters, "My hope is that this sentence will deter others from using botnets to commit crimes, especially the youthful ones who commit these crimes and think they're immune from prosecution, that they'll never get caught." The legal significance was monumental. This was the first prosecution in U.S. history where someone was sentenced to prison specifically for profiting from botnets used to launch DDoS attacks and sent spam. Existing computer fraud laws, written before botnets became widespread, had been successfully applied to a new business model. Ancheta served his sentence first in California, then at Federal Correctional Institution in Ellenwood, Pennsylvania. Sobey never contacted him in prison. In February 2008, Sobey pleaded guilty to juvenile delinquency charges, receiving a much lighter sentence due to his age. The botnet king was behind bars, but the empire he'd proven profitable was just beginning to spread.
Ancheta was released in 2009 after serving his full sentence. What happened next remains largely unknown. Unlike other hackers who became cybersecurity consultants or public speakers, Ancheta vanished. No interviews, no conference appearances, no LinkedIn profile. His supervised release conditions restricted computer access. His felony convictions restricted employment options. One thing is certain: the legal framework established by his case became the blueprint for future botnet prosecutions. When Mirai botnet operators were arrested in 2017, prosecutors cited precedents from United States v. Ancheta. When Emotet and TrickBot criminals faced charges, the legal arguments traced back to 2006. The botnet business model Ancheta professionalized is now a multi-billion-dollar criminal industry. Modern botnets infect millions of devices, not just computers, but IoT devices, routers, cameras. The attacks are more sophisticated, the profits are exponentially higher. But law enforcement learned too. In 2005, the Federal Trade Commission, in conjunction with 35 government agencies, organized initiatives to encourage ISPs to monitor and quarantine compromised computers. Operation Bot Roast became the template for international cybercrime task forces. The ironic truth: Ancheta's blatant mistakes, advertising under his real name, ignoring warnings, bragging about income, buying a BMW with cash, made him easy to catch. Modern botnet operators learned from his failures. They use cryptocurrency, encrypted communications, sophisticated operational security, international jurisdictions with no extradition. What Ancheta proved was possibility. Botnets could generate serious money. What law enforcement proved was inevitability. Blatant cybercrime gets prosecuted. Somewhere today, in an IRC channel you'll never find, someone is advertising fresh bots, IoT devices, cryptocurrency payments only, serious buyers only. The first botnet king is gone. The throne remains occupied. The BMW was auctioned off years ago. The empire he built never stopped growing.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to Arxis for more deep dives into the world's biggest cyber crimes. Check out this next investigation and let me know in the comments what hackers we should cover next.